Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with Tom King's Batman. Last time, Ivy briefly took over the world so easily, it's a wonder she never tried it before. Selina found her wedding dress, and Booster Gold screwed up the space-time continuum. On with the next batch of stories, starting with The Best Man.
I love you, baby! Will you marry me? Where are you going?
Issue 48's cover has Joker knock over a chessboard, with pieces modeled after the Bat family. Except the knight is still a horse. Weird. The alternate by Frank Cho is line-heavy. It's not bad, but kinda makes all but Bruce and Selina's skin look like wood carving. We begin with a man praying intently in a church, as others are shot and begging for mercy off-panel. He could be hoping for rescue or is seeking solace before meeting his maker, since he is eventually killed too. This massacre and subsequent Batman 66 theme reference brought to you by the Mr. J. Batman crashes inside, so the clown takes the only survivor as a hostage, possibly the bride of her own wedding, threatening to shoot her if Bats moves one teeny tiny inch. Then accidentally fires. Joker would then sue the gun manufacturer for their flimsy triggers. He was awarded $2.5 million. Plan B, get a new hostage. Pointy Ears himself. Joker repeats his "don't move an inch" line before clarifying how he screwed up last time, as if neither of them just witnessed his murder. I have to be very careful. If I kill you now, Batman's going to punch me. Provided he had prep time to punch someone after being revolvered in the temple, which he may have already figured out. Joker somehow heard about Bats' engagement and wanted to contact him, but didn't know how, so went to a church, killed everyone, then had the idea to kill a church full of people, so came to this cathedral. It's a wordy explanation like King is wont to be, but does feel borderline on brand for Joker in a way, even when he accidentally fires again point blank in Batsy's forehead and responds with, "Oh, coconuts." Of course he isn't dead. His cowl isn't even so much as scuffed thanks to it being made of, or at least reinforced with, Kevlar.
Not scientifically possible!
This greatly exaggerates the ability of Kevlar, which, while bullet-resistant, can still wound flesh, and at that close a range would probably crack Bruce's skull. Also, Joker's blood is apparently black. Not sure if that's a coloring error or what, but moving on. To prevent further punches or batarangs to his face, Mr. J finds yet another hostage, himself, putting the barrel to his own head, and repeating the "one more inch" threat verbatim.
It's my job to be repetitive. My job. My job. Repetitiveness is my job.
Imagine a comedian trying to do crowd work, but instead of cracking wise about what he gets from a certain member of an audience, it just becomes an actual conversation about Steve's job as an accountant for a construction company. Joker is a bit more tedious than entertaining, is my point. Yeah, he's been snarky regarding murder and torture with little seriousness, and it kind of makes sense that he might repeat this threat with each new hostage he finds, like an actor doing new takes of a line, but it feels more like King's established habit of redundant dialogue than something Joker specifically would do for laughs. Anywho, he starts talking about his allegedly Catholic mom, and the story of theological philosopher St. Augustine, who at first thought there were two powers, good and evil, and one's life is based on choosing between them as they try to pull you in. However, he had a revelation that there was only a single power, God, with nothing else tugging at you, and salvation, paradise, is found heading to him, while everything else is chaos. St. Augustine is also known as Augustine of Hippo. There's a joke right there, and he didn't go for it. You disappoint me, murderous psycho clown. He convinces Batman to kneel and pray beside him before the altar, and asks if he's the Caped Crusader's best man.
I have enough choices as it is. I just narrowed it down to the most qualified and competitive candidates. My butler, my eldest sidekick, or my German Shepherd.
The altar explodes, Joker having set a bomb in the cross earlier and forgot to mention it. Recovering rather quickly, with Batman unconscious in the rubble, the clown grabs his gun, saying that his mom said, "So it was with God for Augustine, so it is with love in life." Love is the true north to head towards, the salvation, as he points his weapon at his old foe. Outside, Selina repeats what Bats told her about Joker being unlike other villains, worried that he'll kill her, and wanting her to stay put. But after a gunshot rings out, she heads inside. Issue 49's cover sees Catwoman fighting Joker in the church while Batman is on the ground, either unconscious or resting in irritation that he has to deal with all this.
Don't mess with Catwoman on her wedding day.
Well, it's not her wedding day, so it seems like this is a good time to mess with her. Checkmate! The alternate is the betrothed holding each other in what I think is a more acrylic style, and it's really good. Weird that the second part of a two-part arc gets the finale subtitle. I mean, it's technically true, but still kind of weird. Bats is out of commission, possibly with a bullet wound in his chest, or that's just some odd line work, while Joker stands before Selina and reminisces about how fun the good old days were, the rogues and their various gimmicks. He opens fire on her, managing 14 shots from a 6-shooter without reloading. Must be John Wayne's gun. Oops, my mistake. 15 shots, because his last bullet hits Kyle in the gut as she slashes at his throat. The next several pages are each labeled later, them lying in the rubble, time skipping while they hold their wounds to prevent bleeding out, but chatting very casually, like why Penguin uses umbrellas, about Two-Face walking the line between straight-laced and the crooked, that he could go both ways.
Phrasing?
Naturally, the conversation turns to Batman, how he's so much better at everything that his enemies always lost, and how Mr. J sees death as a kind of victory. It's the punchline to the joke. If you told it well enough, you can take your bow. That makes a weird kind of sense. Did not have relatable existential profundity from modern-day Joker on my bingo card today. They even discussed the wedding, Joker saying how the two of them should talk about the ceremony, how Selina stole her dress, and he'd like to see her in it, buried in it, to be more specific, of course. She says that for all the years Joker and the other loonies have obsessed over Batman, they don't really know him. They see his scowl and think he wants misery, so they give it to him, when what he wants is happiness. Joker disagrees, that he does know bats, killing one of his Robins and thousands more just to give him purpose. He may want peace, and he'd get it if the clown just offed all his rogues and then himself, but if they go through with the wedding and the Dark Knight finds some joy, he'd lose that frown. He can't be happy and be the Batman. Ah, Joker's been eating out of Dan DiDio's bowl, I see. Selina tells a joke she made up when she was a kid. It never made her laugh, but it gave her comfort during tough times. A kid bets his 2-year-old brother if he can name 2 letters of the alphabet, he'll get $20. So the younger child responds, okay. It's corny, but does get a laugh from the clown. I don't know if naming the kids is significant, but it sort of feels like padding the dialogue. Though when she asks if he wants to hear it, he says, I do. Maybe that's a very subtle joke, since they were discussing the wedding. And he killed a wedding full of people. Also, he mentions he likes that the older brother is named Chuck, so perhaps a reference to his love of Charlie Brown. Moving on, as much as Joker likes, even loves Catwoman, he needs to save Bats from marrying her, so he gets up, takes his hand off his throat to load his gun, and takes aim because he needs the vigilante to stand in his way, to hit him, call him a horror, and stop him from killing everything. If he's not Batman, then it's just not fun. Or he meant to say funny because he passes out from blood loss. Later, yet again, Pointy Ears calls out to his bride-to-be from off-panel, saying he was poisoned, paralyzed, and is fighting through it, but feels confident Joker didn't get whatever he wanted. The issue ends with Selina cradling Joker as she begins laughing. So, yeah, that's kind of a weird ending, with a lot of questions I don't think need to be lingering. I feel like this could have been a single issue. We could cut a lot of Joker repeating himself and droning on, but I think his chat with Miss Kyle could have been condensed with little loss of dialogue. There is something about the two of them talking like work friends that was pretty fun. Perhaps the caption kept reading later to not address how long they were in a church that had gunfire and an explosion ringing out from it, and at no point did police or EMTs arrive. As for why Bats was unconscious for so long, did Joker use a poisoning revolver we just didn't see? Because it looked like the same regular gun. But if an actual point-blank bullet to the head didn't do much, then how'd he infect him with a paralytic? And why did Selina laugh maniacally at the end? It seems like the clown may have died, but of course he didn't, so it can't be out of that kind of triumph. Maybe it relates to her joke about the two brothers. finally finding it funny, but I don't see the connection. Unless Joker is the older bro, and him letting go of his wound is like how Chuck easily lost his bet. Did she intentionally wait him out so his more serious wound would bleed out slowly, but more than if he had just tried shooting her earlier? He'd lose enough blood to at least black out before he could pull the trigger? Or is she somehow infected with Joker toxin? There are other points I'll get to later, because now it's time for the wedding. And if the ring bearer isn't a bat that Bruce trained for just this occasion, then I don't even know what the point is anymore. The cover to the extra-sized 50th issue has the two kissing as if they were just announced bat and wife. Him in his costume, her in her dress and mask, under an arch of flowers. The first alternate has him gliding down with a bunch of bats, I assume to fill out the groom's side of the aisle, then both a colored and penciled work by Jim Lee, of them pressing their heads together in the rain. Intricate with the present events are a bunch of pin-ups by various artists of Batman and Catwoman in various designs, depicting different eras or stages of their relationship, with letters from one to the other about how they met, what they initially seemed like, and how their eyes revealed more about them as their romance evolved. You know what they say, the blank white lenses of a mask are the windows to the soul. Also, this one by Neil Adams looks like Catwoman is waiting for Bruce to notice how great her butt looks in her costume. In the present, they decide to have their wedding at dawn on a specific rooftop, with only 2 guests as witnesses. Bats goes to a bar to retrieve a Judge Wolfman, later telling Alfred that he'll be too drunk to remember what he'd see or sign, which will keep his secret safe. Still seems like a really risky move. Are you telling me that in all the superhero community, not one of them is an ordained minister? Selina arranges for her friend Holly Robinson to get out of Arkham for a while to be her witness. They each take out one of the Tweedle brothers. Oh, and such a smart move for Batman to call Alfred by his name while doing so. And I wonder if Bruce even knows who her fiancé's witness is, because Kyle leads her blindfolded through the Batcave into the manor. He definitely doesn't know Holly has been aware of his secret as long as Selina, and this is supposed to soften the blow before she tells him? Like taking the blindfold off in the same room as the sliding bookcase wouldn't be a clue? Like she couldn't figure out where in that room the entrance is if she took a little time to figure it out? Dumb rookie mistakes by both of them. She in her dress and he in his tuxedo, they meet in the hallway to make out a little on a very creative 2-page spread.
They're all detectives. They think they know something deep, profound, but they don't know a damn thing, do they? But enough about comic book reviewers on YouTube.
Back in separate rooms, Holly mentions that having known Bruce from the beginning, she finds it unbelievable how happy he is, that he's never been like this, and that he always seemed to need the misery. What? Yeah, I agree with Catwoman. What is she talking about? Holly doesn't know the guy. Sure, she may have heard some stuff about Batman, about Bruce, maybe some news reports, street-level rumors, gossip around town, but she doesn't actually know him personally, and they've only met a couple of times before now. Where is this supposed insight coming from? By contrast, Bruce wants Alfred as his witness, instead of Clark or Grayson, and the butler is so honored they hug. It's a really nice moment.
I mean, you might as well. There's no reception, so you won't be on catering duty or anything.
As the betrothed and their guests take separate cars to their rooftop destination, Selina mentions still needing to finish a letter to Bruce, the one we've been reading on all those pin-ups. They've been so busy either being out on the streets or resting from being out on the streets, there's still a lot she wants to say. She asks her friend if she's a hero, to which Holly responds she kinda has to be at this point, right? Bruce, who wrote his letter for much the same reason, asks Pennyworth if he can be happy, and the butler says after everything he's endured, doesn't he have to be in order to keep going? This was in July of 2018, so maybe they should have put off the ceremony another 19 months until after Dan DiDio left DC Comics. Bruce's letter concludes that because of Selina, he can be more than the guy with the dead parents warring on crime, move beyond that simplification and pain, and be the man who will always try to love her better. Her letter acknowledges the hero he became because of his trauma, but what with Booster's time meddling and Joker's recent attack, how Bats couldn't stop him if he became too content, she figures that if they become happy, she'd be killing the Batman. So, because of the lesson of every story that heroes make sacrifices, she decides to sacrifice her love. She ditches her cat-eared veil and hops off a roof in Kane Plaza, while, after waiting so long that the judge is about to sober up, Bruce jumps off from Finger Tower, because creator references, and we of course presume he survives. The comic ends with Holly returning to Arkham, saying Selina was devastated but determined, and kneels before Bane. Sitting on a pile of what I'm sure he convinced his therapist were his emotional support skulls, he's certain that he has broken the bat. And look who's with him! Riddler, Joker, Psycho Pirate, Hugo Strange, Ventriloquist, Gotham Girl, and Flashpoint Thomas Wayne? And Skeets? Okay, before I continue, I'm gonna need to do this again. I mean, some in this group makes sense. I'm guessing Psycho Pirate wants his mask back, or revenge for losing it. Maybe Scarface didn't like how someone else used the Ventriloquist, who I thought was sent to a better facility. Strange is always obsessed with the Dark Knight. Joker probably thought it'd be fun to mess with him. Riddler remains to be seen, but he didn't exactly feature in recent events. Even Skeets, one could assume, might be the one that saved Booster Gold the night the Waynes were killed, because why would the time traveler be smart enough to gather the pieces the second time his buddy gets destroyed? I guess they were just lying in the alley for decades until someone finally found them? Gotham Girl certainly raises an eyebrow, but Flashpoint Batman, who told his son to give up the cape, he's in on this? Even ignoring, for the moment, how he ended up on this earth, you mean to tell me that some steroid-abusing luchador convinced him that ending a relationship that could have made Bruce happy, and as they've been trying to hammer into us, would make him not want to be Batman anymore? Meaning that he'd still be Batman because he's not happy? Would somehow get him to stop being Batman?
No, that's dumb.
Not satisfying.
The issue itself is mostly fine in the build-up, but not without its problems. Much as I like naming streets, buildings, even rooms and hallways of Wayne Manor after notable creators that have worked on the Bat titles over the decades, and it is a nice acknowledgement, it can kind of take me out of the story, especially when done so often. But maybe that's just me. Bruce was uncharacteristically sloppy, mentioning his butler's name while fighting a villain, getting a drunk judge to officiate and hoping he just forgets everything. And I don't think it can be attributed to an early sign that happiness means he can't be Batman, since another writer made the same error repeatedly, so it hardly feels like proof for that argument. I like the pinups, mostly. Some of the artists, which may not be featured here, aren't quite my cup of tea, but using them for the couple's letters was a really good idea. I do dig Ty Templeton's art, but I'm not so sure about how he did the eyes on Catwoman here. The larger point that King is trying to arrive at seems to be that Bruce turned the sorrow of losing his parents into something useful for Gotham, and the world at times. And since he's resigned himself to this sad life, the prospect of being happy eluded him. He doesn't know how to be happy, and thus the entire basis of Batman is threatened if he starts becoming happy. This has been done before. For example, that new Batman Adventures episode where he married a plant woman created by Poison Ivy. However, if being with Selina has been making him happier, why hasn't he stopped already? And why didn't she consider giving him motivation to stay in the cowl during their relationship if it seems he's about to falter? Not to mention, other people have worn the Batsuit when he's unavailable. There hasn't really been anything to show the reader that this Bruce Wayne is any less effective as a vigilante when he becomes more joyous in his life. Booster Alternate Bruce doesn't really count since he had an entire lifetime to live. It's like with Bruce's dad and Flashpoint Thomas. It's still two different versions whose choices and circumstances were entirely different. Comparing them as if they were identical makes no sense, and I don't know why King's tried to do so twice so far. The reason I'm not quite as mad about this at the moment is because I'm waiting to see how it all gets explained later. King hasn't been all that bad, and I'm willing to maintain some benefit of the doubt. So let's tackle today's final story, Cold Days. Issue 51's cover has Bats holding Freeze over a ledge, his helmet removed and his coolant tube pulled. I guess pointy ears heard one ice pun too many. The alternate is him squatting on a rooftop, and it looks kind of awkward if I'm being honest, especially the way he just stares. Anyway, to succinctly set things up, 3 young women died of what seemed to be natural causes, blood clots, but Batman's examination showed lower blood temperatures in their brain stems. This leads him to track down Mr. Freeze, who'd been out on parole. Sometime later, Bruce Wayne is called in for jury duty, to much media attention and even puzzlement from fellow potential jurors. In the selection process, it's stated that Bruce has had some past associations with Batman, like many in Gotham, but when asked about the nature of those associations, we get a shot of Freeze in pain and then the attorney carrying on in the last panel. We don't get to read whatever answer was given for whatever reason, so I kind of wonder what the point was. Was the whole Batman Inc. thing removed from canon? Because I think this businessman that openly admitted to funding a vigilante for years would get disqualified. Or is that why we didn't get an answer? The writer and editors couldn't think of an explanation. So I guess we won't get anything about him giving $1 billion to a supercriminal in the Giggle Puzzle Skirmish either, huh? Another weird detail is that neither attorney objects to juror number 10, but Bruce is number 4. And since there are 12 jurors, did they get interviewed out of order? Or only ones that seem like they may be biased? I was only called to jury duty once myself, and I didn't even get this far, so what do I know? On the next page, he and his fellow jurors enter a deliberation room that's apparently very cold. Kinda weird that the trial happened so soon after Freeze is apprehended. This is played as shortly after Selina stood Bruce up, so does Gotham have an expedited process for trying their more theatrical crooks? While Bruce is sequestered for the proceedings, Dick Grayson wears the cape and responds to the bat signal. Gordon can tell it's not the same guy under the mask and asks if the original is okay, to which Grayson says no.
He's been lying in bed, playing Paramore nonstop. Don't get me started on his sad poetry.
Something else to note, Grayson uses his real name as he's talking out loud in a voicemail for Bruce to see if he's okay while fighting Killer Croc. Not only is this another case of a hero stupidly risking their identity in public, it's just, why do this now, while fighting a metahuman crocodile man? It doesn't make any more sense than how his dialogue isn't strained or struggling in the fight. It reads unusually casual. On to the trial, police found no apparent connection between the victims, and the coroner initially concluded natural causes for all 3. They were able to independently verify Batman's discovery of the temperature drop, but the defense's questioning has Gordon admit the Caped Crusader isn't licensed to perform autopsies.
Well, you fooled me, buddy.
While the jurors have lunch, Wayne goes into a bathroom and, in a rage, rips out a urinal and throws it against the opposite wall.
We only get $8 a day for this!
Maybe not the stealthiest move, but he'll probably slink out through the vents so no one sees him exiting where a fixture just got smashed. Bullock testifies finding Mr. Freeze in an alley, unconscious, with a note saying, "He did it, ask him," with a battering lodged in the villain's cheek, making it clear who this was from. Victor himself takes the stand, saying he confessed to killing those women for an experiment, both to Batman and the police after he was revived. Under oath, however, he says the bat he'd fought many times before was very different that night, just hitting him over and over, not caring that Freeze had nothing to do with those deaths, and how it seemed that if he didn't confess, he'd have been killed. Trial concludes, so now the jury has to begin discussing the case, with many already siding with pointy ears given how often he's saved the city, or their own families, or the flawless logic of, come on, it's so obvious. The initial vote has most people saying guilty, but of course there's always one dissenter, and this time it's Bruce Wayne. This summer, coming to a theater near you, it's 12 Angry Bats. The next chapter's cover has Bats and Bruce angrily grabbing each other by the tie or cape. I've heard of people being divided on topics, but this is ridiculous. The alternate is cool in a spooky way, our hero in a spotlight with various bats around him. Feels like this would make a good cover for a scarier story. 3 key pieces of evidence suggest Freeze's guilt: the victim's lower brain temperature, the signed confession to the police, claiming to have been experimenting on the women to revive his wife, and the fact that he was wearing his suit and carrying his freezing gun, in violation of his probation. Out on probation and couldn't wear the thing he needs to live outside a sub-zero environment. Where was he living? Did he have an apartment in a Walmart storage freezer? Everyone agrees these established facts should be enough. Not to mention, the rest of them can't afford to miss work like a certain playboy, having families to take care of. Bruce suggests taking an hour or 2 to contextualize things, and if none of them have budged, he'll change his vote. Wait, are we voting about the trial or where to order lunch? After a break, Bruce addresses the scientific element, how victims died in a way unique to Mr. Freeze's motif. They were the same age as his wife, killed in a way that suggested experimentation, with conclusions the coroner missed. One juror figures he's Batman, he's just better. But Wayne suggests perhaps the victim did indeed die from clots, and someone, for whatever reason, after the coroner and before pointy ears, created the remnants of decreased temperature. Who it was doesn't matter, as Bruce slams the table and says it's an explanation for how Gordon missed it beyond Batman is just better, and convicting someone based on assumptions. He asks them what makes the most sense if they take out the vigilante's presumed super competence.
Whenever you notice something like that, a wizard did it.
The coroner was good at his job, so maybe the evidence wasn't there, but was upon Batman's inspection, and he subsequently hunted down the wrong man. So he should have been mercilessly pummeling Captain Cold, or Icicle Jr., or Killer Frost, or Frosty the Snowman. The story has splash pages of Batman's pursuit of Freeze, with captions of Bruce talking with other jurors during the breaks. One such chat is with a Metropolis native who says how different and dirtier Gotham is by comparison. Unlike his hometown, someone messing with dead bodies is entirely possible here, suggesting Wayne's argument is getting through. Freeze said on the stand that an associate, whom he refused to name, warned the Bat was looking for him, so he rebuilt his gun, donned his cold suit, and left his house to confront the Caped Crusader, all against the terms of his parole as a matter of self-defense. A juror that looks like a shaggier Jim Gordon figures the guilty would run, but an innocent man would stay put, let Bats make a visit and talk it out. To that, Bruce suggests, given his criminal past, Freeze knows Batman in a way that the average jurors don't. On a page featuring the villain's various designs, Bruce notes how, over the years, Freeze has had numerous plans that all ended the same way. The crime fighter swoops in, beats him down, ends his schemes. Over and over, for years. So, when hearing the same guy is looking for him in a connection to a crime he didn't commit, why expect this time to be any different? That he just wants to have a nice little chat? I mean, I suppose if he put out a spread of chamomile tea and oatmeal raisin cookies... Could he be lying? Sure, but it'd be too coincidental that he was in his suit when Batman found him, so it's equally possible that he's telling the truth. And given that beyond a reasonable doubt stipulation, it'd be wrong to convict him for just wearing the suit when there's another possibility. Another juror seems to agree, as in a conversation with Bruce, they mention having a son that got into fights with another boy. When hearing this attacker was coming for him, Tay's kid bought a gun, legally. I guess meaning boy in terms of affection regardless of age. However, Tay didn't like this, took the weapon, and had the lad report the threat to the police. But the cop simply said, "This is Gotham, keep the gun." Because no problem could ever arise from that logic, right folks? Now the confession, and a juror named Missy interrupts, anticipating Wayne's argument that Freeze only admitted it after being attacked and frightened. Yet the police weren't going by what he told Batman, but the one Victor gave them, one he told for days before changing his story, without Bats around to threaten him. And she makes this argument making every face I imagine is made by every Twitter contrarian that's ever lobbed an ad hominem at me. Dismissive, condescending, unjustifiably assertive, and smug in a diluted and undeserved sense of superiority. And we know she's about to be contradicted because Bruce Wayne. So why would someone confess to something they didn't do? Besides coercion, being threatened with a longer sentence if they choose to defend themselves, the less scrupled officers lying and manipulating to get a phony confession, that kind of stuff. After reminding us for the 3,957th time that his parents were shot in front of him, but now with some added dramatic flourishes, he notes how he's been happy, had great friends and victories, even love. But even with all that, the loss of something or someone important can renew the fear from that night in the alley, making him not himself, and wanting anything to escape being that scared. Words juxtaposed to Bats savagely punching Freeze, to the point that his knuckles leave a trail of blood in the air. Bruce contends such cruel violence didn't just leave Victor afterwards, it stuck with him, so his confession was meaningless, regardless of when and to whom he made it, because it was all to escape that fright. Missy claims, thinking he's real smart, Bruce is trying to force his belief on others, how Batman isn't the hero Gotham City considers him to be, and asks if he can actually prove it.
Yeah, I can prove that. I am, after all, the world's greatest detective. Ah, dang it, I did it again. Alfred, call Martian Manhunter. I need some people's memories erased. Yes, again.
Issue 53's cover exclaims Dark Knight No More, as high above the city, Bruce discards the batsuit while he, and the gargoyle he stands on, are imposed with an image of him making out with Selina. If any of his suit lands in a trash can, I think Peter Parker can sue. The alternate is pretty neat, an image of Bats with his torso showing his bat plane being shot at by helicopters. Jeez, just pay your parking tickets, for crying out loud. Bruce notices that Missy is wearing a cross, and considers her religious beliefs potentially vital to the discussion. Wayne says he used to believe in God, how his Christian dad revered the immortal soul and Holy Trinity, believed in trusting the Almighty's will, even took young Bruce to church, but wanted him to believe in it on his own. My parents' murder aside, my faith really started falling apart when my butler got me the wrong kind of Japanese sword for my birthday. I put aside believing in a deity, or believing in anything my father thought had saved him. I couldn't really see anything had saved him. Kind of glossing over the context, aren't we? True, your father died, but Christian faith is based on the idea that following Jesus and adhering to God's will saves us from death of the soul, and though our bodies may be killed, there is new life in heaven. I can understand Kid Bruce not being terribly interested in paying attention to these lessons, but feels like a big detail for such a reputed sleuth to overlook. Anyway, he eventually went out into the world looking for answers, something solid to put his faith in, but found nothing until he returned to Gotham so something would find him. Deep down, I wanted to be on the list of someone's really obscure scavenger hunt. Wayne says all these jurors cared enough to follow through on their summons, go through the civic process, but they also know Gotham is a place for monsters and demons, threats beaten back by a man dressed like a bat. In his search for transcendence, Bruce found Batman. Pressed on this, he says that if defining the Almighty as the infallible, responsible determiner of life and death, yeah, he sort of thought Bats was God. He asks how many jurors are alive because of the vigilante, and everyone raises their hands, himself included. Pointy Ears declared Victor Freeze guilty, and they have no right to judge the caped figure. Their lives are his word their law, and theirs is not to inspect, but rather worship. For who are they to he of the batwing-covered fists? God is above us, and he wears a cape. The Sistine Chapel's gonna need some painters to update his look on the ceiling then. He cites the story of Job, who had things going pretty well for him, until God destroyed his farm, took his family, and overall seemed to ruin his life. When angrily asking why he had done all this, God's reply was basically, "Who are you to question me, creator of everything?" Bruce breaks down a little before continuing, how he'd spent years believing in Batman, who could protect him from his pain and the fear of everything breaking, and it worked, getting him the happiness he never thought he would have. Then it fell apart, of course omitting that it was because a cat burglar had broken up with him. He screamed a prayer, begging Batman to help him, and he's still waiting. He concludes that Batman isn't God. For all that he tries to do, even after failure, he can't provide solace, comfort, or hope for the eternal. God blesses your soul with grace. Batman punches people in the face. Now that's reductive. He also kicks them, elbows them, dangles them from rooftops. But even so, that phrase would fit nicely on a t-shirt. Though the jurors have the godlike power to influence Mr. Freeze's fate, they're constrained by their humanity, aware that they aren't perfect, and pray their best is good enough. Wayne argues in knowing that they know Batman. He isn't perfect. He's just a guy in a suit and can make mistakes. They are not Job arguing with God. They are 12 citizens speaking of another citizen, doubting him and thus the case. They can be just as good as he is, just as he can be as flawed as they are. As Freeze stated, Bats wasn't himself. To condemn Victor for Batman's errors would be to condemn the crime fighter himself. As they've all been saved by him, Bruce pleads for them to do what they would do for anyone that'd done the same. What they'd never do for God. Save Batman. Not that God needs to be saved, but I digress. As the jurors exit the room, we have captions of a later conversation between Wayne and Alfred. Not only did they vote not guilty, but it seems a certain rich guy greased some palms to be part of the proceedings. The comic ends with Bruce confessing he feels lost and doesn't want to wear the suit he'd been working in more recently, and wants the original suit brought out so he can remember who he is, as the final page sees him in his gray and black suit. He changed his mind when he realized original suit technically meant the red tights with the domino mask and protruding wings on the back. Cold Days plays out very much like 12 Angry Men, which has been parodied by or otherwise influenced other shows and movies involving disputing juries. Similarly to how the story's room was hot, likely to increase agitation among those characters, it's mentioned a couple of times that this room is cold. But I don't think it really goes anywhere. Maybe to liken to the cold-based baddie they're eager to convict, make them more likely to say he's evil because, they're uncomfortable. But it's hardly a total copy, as we don't get dramatic flips of each juror's vote, more suggestions that Bruce is convincing them. This is Bats realizing he may have wrongly implicated Freeze, interrogating him the way he did because Selina left him. Sure, he could have gone to Gordon with his error and looked for that someone else who could have experimented on those women, but this way he instills in everyday Gothamites that, despite the Dark Knight's prowess, he's flawed and capable of mistakes, such as the woman who said she sometimes overlooks things. While I've seen some remarks about Bruce saying he used to believe in God as a sign that he now considers himself atheist, it's also been suggested that he actually does think God exists, just that Wayne no longer has faith in his grand works. The latter kind of makes more sense to me, since he's worked with the Spectre, God's Hand of Vengeance, and Zoriel, a legit angel that's been on the JLA. So an atheist Batman would be overlooking some pretty big obvious clues. The story of Job isn't of God as an egomaniac that does whatever he wants, but that he knows what he's doing. He knows what's best, what is or isn't going to happen, and it's a matter of trusting his judgment, his decisions, even if they seem disappointing to us or counter to what we'd prefer. Trust me, I'm Catholic, I know. In clarifying Batman's human fallibility, Bruce is trying something very difficult in the real world, getting people to stop idolizing and worshipping someone that doesn't deserve it. He is no more above the facts than anyone else. The story could have also been an indictment of how susceptible people are to confirmation bias, especially when they've internalized someone for their actions, perceived or otherwise. Real people tend to cling to personalities, celebrities, athletes, etc., like they can do no wrong because they're funny, charming, throw a ball real far, or claim to share similar beliefs, like it's somehow impossible they could make a mistake, be flawed, or not as good as they appear in these parasocial relationships. So a criticism of that celebrity can feel like an attack on their fans. Fact is, these people will slip up, be wrong, and sometimes they just aren't the fine people they seem to be on TV. And I have experience with the follies of deifying a terrible character. The backfire effect, when someone either rejects objective facts that contradict what they think or try to twist those facts to justify misinformation, can be very strong, happen to anyone, and be near impossible to overcome. So of course Batman managed to sway 11 people that are convinced he's flawless.
You're every bit the detective that your followers on the internet believe.
Beyond that, I would argue there seems to be some contradiction to what King has written previously. First, when asking who had their lives saved by Batman, Bruce raises his own hand, which seems to suggest he no longer considers the cape and cowl a form of suicide, like he did in issue 12. Second, he says that he put every bit of himself into the vigilante. I assume the jurors took him to mean in terms of faith, and how it worked to make him happy. This stands in contrast to him admitting the exact opposite to Gotham Girl. He could have been vaguely referring to how it led him to Selina, but it still feels like opposition to his previously stated feelings, with not a whole lot in the stories up to now to support such changes. At best, he told Damian he was getting there in terms of being happier, but here he's talking like he was happy. He could have exaggerated or lied to some degree, but he was very carefully honest in his words, avoiding anything that might reveal his identity, and it feels like lying would undermine his means of trying to convince people to open themselves up to alternative likelihoods. Finally, him returning to an older costume, the original when he was starting out solo, is perhaps a callback to Selina's statement in issue 44 about how they change their outfits while looking for some perfect fit. Bruce has lost something and now has to look for it again. Though I do feel this three-parter exemplifies an oft-overlooked element to Batman. He does believe in the justice system. That's one of the reasons he doesn't kill his enemies, preferring they stand trial. And he was in a unique position to note there's reasonable doubt in his apprehension of Freeze that shouldn't be ignored. Though bribing his way onto the jury maybe kinda hurts that point. These 3 issues were really good at grounding a hero so often put on a pedestal with the prep time argument. While not the most action-packed, it had him face some unpleasant facts about himself, his state of mind, and how heartbreak has affected him and his work. He has humanized how a handful of people see him. Not that he's bad, but as imperfect as they are. And maybe he's hoping that spreads out to more of Gotham. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.